Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon. Here in Miami, it is 1 p.m. I'm very happy to share with you this interview that I did last Friday with Lorena Miranda Bendeck. We met through social media and we connected. I like her work a lot, her power as a woman entrepreneur. So here is the interview. I hope you enjoy with me, and I will see you soon. Okay? Hello, everybody. We are sitting this afternoon via Zoom with Lorena, founder and owner of Sonder and Holiday. We're doing the social distancing. Both of us are here in Miami. And we want to take this opportunity to share with you about her project, about all the work that she's doing, the communities she's working with, and also some aspect of social media that I think all of us are going through. So, how are you, Lorena? How's everything?
I'm very good, Carolina. Thank you so much for having me. As a small business, I really do appreciate an outlet like this to help us spread our message, or what I believe is our very important message. So thank you so much for having us. I'm doing well.
Thank you, thank you. I know it gets complicated with this social distancing, but we're doing our best. So, tell us a little bit about your brand. How did it start? And tell us how is it?
Okay, well, very briefly, for many years, I was an international steel trader. I used to buy and sell steel all over the world, and I would travel to a lot of places that oftentimes I only knew of because I had to look them up on a map, you know? And of course, whenever I would have free time in some of these countries, I would do what most people do, which is I would go shopping and I would visit the local markets to see what people were making, what I could buy, some unique things that I could take home. And I constantly came across the same situation. It didn't matter which country I was in, which region, it was always the same story over and over.
Mhm.
Someone making something amazing by hand, that I would pay a premium for if I saw in a beautiful store on a pretty shelf with the right lighting.
Mhm.
Yet this person was having a hard time meeting life's basic requirements, like putting a proper roof over their head or feeding themselves or their children or sending their kids to school and things of that nature. And to me, there was a very big disconnect. I said, it doesn't make any sense. You make something that's amazing. In that I know would sell for a premium. So that's kind of where like the little genesis or the little seed was planted, where I figured, I live in Miami, I love the Caribbean, I'm always traveling to the Caribbean, I'm a resort girl, I love hats and baskets and bathing suits and caftans. So I thought, what a great idea to start a resort line
Mhm.
of straw products that were socially conscious, to help bridge this gap between artisans like them and consumers like myself, who we love our luxury and we care about who and by whom and how our products are made. And so that was how it all started. And then from there, believe me, if you told me 5 years ago, when I had a very cushy job traveling the world making a lot of money, which I'm not right now because this is still in the startup stage,
Mhm.
that I would be selling hats and baskets, straw hats and baskets, I would have laughed at you, but here I am
Good.
doing just
I'm happy that you're here. So you're doing hats and baskets and bags with who? Where are you working on? Are you working from?
Okay, well, right now my two main sources are Ecuador and Ghana. I work with two groups in each place that we have a very intimate, very strong relationship, and it's direct.
Mhm.
There's no middle person. There's no one there to interfere, especially no one there to interfere with how the money reaches our artisans. One of our biggest things is ensuring that our artisans are paid fairly. Oftentimes I pay even above market value because I understand that the value that the market's putting on that is exploitative.
Mhm.
Um, so we do our best to pay our artisans in a way which can ensure at a minimum a hot meal on a daily basis, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So Ecuador and Ghana right now, I source my hats from Ecuador, and I source my baskets out of Ghana.
Mm-hmm.
And we're in the middle of developing other products using their raw materials, and we're also in the process of collaborating with artisans from other parts of the world, because what's happened is that part of our business model and structure is that we reinvest in the communities we source from. So it's made us lucrative to a lot of other artisan groups who want to work with us, you know, but obviously everything still needs to be worked out in after this whole thing blows over, hopefully.
Of course. And how did you choose specifically Ecuador or Ghana?
Well, while I was traveling for business, I would frequent Panama, and I came across the Panama hat, you know, which is actually made in Ecuador and was famously became famous in Panama because, from my understanding, you know, a lot of the people, a lot of the workers who were creating the canal or building the canal used to wear it, and Teddy Roosevelt was famously photographed in that hat, and it became known as the Panama hat. But it's actually made in Ecuador. When I saw the beautiful designs and colors, and really more than anything, it was what was so incredibly just impressive to me was the craftsmanship, you know, to think that this thing is made by hands and fingers. I mean, I could barely braid my own hair, you know. So I was really impressed with that, and I said, my goodness. And by the way, I will say this, not only was I impressed with it, but I was actually really surprised at how cheap it was being sold for. And that told me a lot. You know, I said, wait a second, this thing takes weeks to make, you know, if at this rate, you know, if you consider what the middleman is making, the cost of shipping, how much is the person who's actually making this earning, you know? And that's kind of where we started. So I went to Ecuador for that. And then, of course, as we expanded, you know, what's a beach without a beach basket, right? So I wanted to create a beach basket. I tried straw from different parts of the world, Morocco, Madagascar, Bahamas, Colombia, Barbados. I mean, I went everywhere looking for straw. And the best straw that I found was in Ghana. I mean, it is strong, it is durable. I like to joke that it is Lorena proof because I am not a dainty traveler. I am not dainty with any of my things. And this basket has survived me and all of the toss and turns that I've done to it. So that's when I realized this is it. This product is durable. This is actually going to last generations. So I decided to go to Ghana and source from there.
Very interesting. So you have a production going on from there, and then you are selling since 2 years ago, you told me, 3 years
Right. Well, I've been working with this particular group of artisans now since 2017, but I went to finally visit them in 2018. By the time I visited them in June of 2018, I had already received several orders in Miami. I had already started selling them to several high-end hotels and boutiques. You know, people just love the story. They love the products. This, of course, was during the time in my business where I was still proving this concept, you know. So when I went in 2018, I thought I was going to visit a supplier. I assumed, you know, that they had computers and printers and, you know, business basics. When I got there, I was shocked at the squalor in which they live and work. I mean, the working conditions, they have no electricity. So they definitely don't have computers and no printers because they don't have any electricity. So I was like, how did you guys collect my orders? I mean, I sent you specifications to print and use those specifications to create. And no, what they would do is that the leader of the tribe or the group, or sorry, the village, I should say, would go 2 hours into town, find Wi-Fi, download the images on WhatsApp on using iPhone 4. Mind you, at that time you had like an iPhone 8 was already out, you know. And he would then go back to the village and with the cracked screen of an iPhone 4 would show the designs to our artisans. And using those images, our artisans would create my entire collection, which would then be distributed to some of the world's most elite resorts in America. I mean, in the world, I should say. And I can't even describe to you what I felt when I realized that. I said, if you guys have done all this with a cracked screen of an iPhone 4, imagine what you could do with a computer. right?
Imagine
Um,
the system developed, no?
exactly. And really, it was a moment where I recognized the incredible economic drivers that are there that had just not have not been turned on.
Mhm.
And one of the things that really was really mind blowing was how easy and cheap it is to fix the situation. For all of us, for us here in the West, a lot of the things that are huge, privileges and what's what I'm looking for, just
Like we
our
get
basics,
granted, yeah.
right, that we take for granted. Like, I mean, the fact that you can open up a tap and water comes out. I mean, you have no idea what kind of privilege that is. A lot of people around this world don't get to do that.
Mhm.
So what it taught me was that there are a lot of economic drivers out there that as a business um, just behooves us to invest in.
Mhm.
And at the same time, it would help propel these communities out of the poverty that they're in. See, our goal is, and I always do kind of stress this, and I say, we're not a charity, right? We're a business. We're in business to make money.
Mhm.
Um, but our goal is to help them help themselves because they're perfectly capable. They've got everything it takes. They've got everything they need. All they need right now, huh?
The talent,
The
incredible.
talent. They have the talent. They have the work ethic. They have the ability. They have the desire. They're hungry to do this. But it's very difficult. Like like how I've heard many times. To expect someone to pull themselves out of something when they don't have a way of pulling themselves out, right? So that's kind of where we come in, where I call it a win-win situation,
Mhm.
because us as a business, we get to be a part of the story and mold this situation, and then they get to take advantage of some of these tools that are now being facilitated for them. Because
Mhm.
another thing that I think it's important to stress is that our goal is not necessarily to just build this place and build this business so
Mhm.
that we can have the best artisans in the world working for us. No, we want them to accept orders from other people too.
Mhm.
You know, we want to develop this area. We want to help them develop this area, and kind of sort of be that little push they need for now, and
Mhm.
then teach them, business basics so that they can then take it from there, because we know that they can. We know that they can. And so, I will say something else that I think is important to mention. When I went there in 2018, and now just recently, 2, 3 weeks ago, um, when I arrive, people are so thankful and so grateful. It's almost like I'm a mythical creature or something. And part of the reason for that perception is because a lot of these people who are completely capable, young, a lot of young people, by the way, um, strong, intelligent, feel like left out from the world, from the rest of the world.
Mhm.
And the idea that an American, particularly, and they do see me as a white person, even though I don't identify as one,
Mhm.
that a white American in their eyes is coming in and is willing to invest and sees this potential is so incredibly empowering to them. It's
Absolutely.
validating for them, and I don't take that lightly. I don't take that lightly. I understand what that means. And I'm still trying to figure out a way for them to understand that they are just as equally important to me, that, you know, they're kind of saving me in this process as well. So, that's why I like to stress that this is a win-win situation, because boy, I need them a lot.
How is this community different from Ecuador? First, let me ask you, this community, how big it is? How many people are involved?
There's about 300 people who live in this community. Weavers, we used to have about 50. We had to narrow it down to 25
Mhm.
because the other 25 were not, producing at our requirements, and they're still learning. So they're in the middle of that learning curve. But considering the growth that we had forecasted for 2020 prior to COVID-19,
Mhm.
we were ready to scale. We were like, we needed to probably have about 100 weavers, and they're all capable of weaving. And by the way, jobs is a very, very difficult thing to come by. If this becomes lucrative enough where they're making enough money, and if, you know, and by the way, we do pay them significantly higher than market value, right? Then it'll entice more and more people to consider basket weaving.
Of course.
Yeah.
So how is it different, this community, from the community you work with in Ecuador?
Well, in Ecuador, actually, the way Ecuador is what I thought Ghana would be. You know, in Ecuador, they have a facility, they have electricity, there's light, there's ventilation, there's air conditioning, there's Wi-Fi, there's printers and computers, there's machines, there's structure, they have a bank account, they have, you know, it's just far more advanced, and it's structured. Mm-hmm. Which when I went to Ecuador in February of this month, because I went to, I'm sorry, of this year, because I went to formally meet this group that I had been working with, I was so inspired. I was like, my God, this is exactly what I want for Ghana. Because not only were the folks in Ecuador working on my massive order, they had orders from other people too. And I said, this is it. This is exactly what I want for Ghana, where they are, you know, it's like a well-oiled machine where they're working consistently on my orders and they're capable of receiving others, and everybody eats, you know. But in Ecuador, it's far, you know, obviously one big difference that we got to maintain or keep in mind here is the environment, right? In Ghana, you're talking sub-Saharan extreme heat, and electricity is very expensive. So having AC is very difficult to come by, because it's energy heavy, which means it's expensive, and because it's so hot, it's barely felt, to be honest. I mean, you need like 3 or 4 AC units to even feel a breeze in some of those places. Whereas in Ecuador, it's up in the mountains where it's always cool, so even just by having windows open, it's enough, you know, to maintain the place at a reasonable temperature. So they have, you know, they have different expenses in that regard. So those are things that we have to kind of maintain, keep in mind as we, you know, consider our reinvestment projects.
Are these communities, the ratio between men and women, how is it? Or is it similar?
Oh, no, it's like 90% women. I mean, I would even joke that men are like kind of like sprinkled into the equation. You know, the men, but however, it's, you know, in both communities, it is a fairly male-dominated culture. I know that in Ecuador, some of those women that weave for us have left abusive situations. And so and by the way, in Ecuador, the government is very, very protective of Ecuadorian made artisanal products.
Okay.
And they subsidize and they promote, and, you know, they're very proud of that. In Ghana, we're not there yet, you know. In Ghana, it is also a very male dominated culture. The men, if anything, some of the biggest things that they handle are with, you know, the finances. You know, like I can't send money to a woman. I have to send it to a man. But to keep it transparent, I gave the women phones. So I get to know when and how they get paid, and to make sure they get paid. So it was kind of, and by the way, the fact that I am a woman going into these places and creating this situation for them, especially in Ghana, I mean, it is so validating for these women. Like, they're so proud of that. Like, they think it's such a cool thing that a woman is telling men what to do. I don't want to make it sound that way, but they jokingly, you know, I know that they feel some kind of pride over that.
Yeah, because it's so male dominated. It's difficult. I was speaking with Michelle, our first interview, and she was telling us that in her project, you know, there's many women that were not even allowed to work at the very beginning, right? And it was complicated. So yeah, no, I can imagine.
Oh, for sure.
So you work with mostly women, and now, well, most of them are the main breeder. How do you say that in English? The breadwinner, the person.
In some cases, yes, that is true.
That brings the money to the house. That's what I want to say, right?
Oh yeah, and especially now. I mean, if you weave for Sonder and Holiday, you're going to earn 4, 5, 6 times as much as if you didn't. So it is very lucrative. And that's kind of one of our goals, was we wanted to make it lucrative because we want the best weavers, you know, we want to have the best product ultimately. But, you know, we really want to have a situation where we are, seen as a prestigious brand that we want to be. And we also this is also part of our way of keeping and maintaining structure in a place that had none. Oftentimes some of these weavers produce products that in their mind is good enough, and it's true. I mean, it's very good, it's well made, but it's not good enough to sell at Nordstrom's or at Four Seasons or at the Mandarin Oriental. So these are things that we had to kind of work with, considering their cultural expectations and ours. So yeah, I mean, there was some kind of clashes, but yes, going through that and that hard part, and we're still dealing with a lot of that, by the way, but is part of the way that we're able to justify the cost, where we're able to kind of, and really I did it so that I could add on to my price tag of what I pay them, because if to the naked eye, if you see what's sold at the market for a third of what I pay them versus what they make with me, the differences are minute, but I know that with time, the differences will show because my products are basically indestructible, right? They last forever. So, and that's due to the quality in which they weave and they produce this. And that's why I've had to do it this way also, because, you got to be very careful that you don't unintentionally spoil the market or ruffle the wrong feathers, right? I mean, I don't live there. What's going to stop someone who's pissed off about us, paying our weavers so high to come in and, burn the place down or do something horrible? I mean, I'm not suggesting it's going to happen, but I've been in situations where we've had, upset competitors, so these are the things that we kind of have to think ahead of when trying to do the right thing in a place that may not be accustomed to it, right? Yeah. And another thing is that you also have to be very, very, very mindful of their customs. Sometimes what you believe may be right will not work over there. So you have to find that balance. And all of these things come with a little bit of a premium, which is why, after you calculate everything, these weavers make significantly more producing our products than selling it to the market. So most definitely, in a lot of cases, these women overnight almost became breadwinners in their homes.
Wow, that's beautiful.
Yeah, I think.
I know you were on track to a lot of businesses here and there and orders, but then the pandemic came.
Yeah.
So what's happening? How are they doing in
Well,
and Ecuador?
Well, in Ecuador, Ecuador has been one of the hardest hit in South America in general. My group in particular lives up in the mountains. They live north of the city called Cuenca, which is like down in a valley, which is about a 4-hour drive from Guayaquil, which Guayaquil is the hot spot right now for Ecuador. The best thing I was able to do for them was, tell them, all right, just please weave from home, no more, no more getting together, especially because a lot of these women are, seniors. Mm-hmm. The lack of, access to healthcare is a big problem. And so I just wanted to do everything I could to help reduce their interactions and even possibility of spreading. Shortly after that, the government mandated it. And even went even further, where they closed all the transport lines, all of, the bus routes. You have to understand that this group of ladies, they work and live way up in the mountain. Like without this bus line, they can't ship any product. So right now, as far as our orders in Ecuador, they're essentially on hold because just simply put, they cannot even leave the facility, and then in Ghana, my goodness, we were very, very lucky. Right before I left, I had already arrived. I had gone there with the intention of implementing our first reinvestment program, which was going to be the soap program, where each weaver would receive 2 very, very large bars of soap at the end of the month, which would be enough for themselves and their families for at least a month. So every month, so basically it would guarantee soap. And the reason this is so important is because
we're talking about the soap, that they have a very difficult time to having access to soap.
Right. Access to soap is Very hard, primarily because, first of all, it's way into the market. So then they would have to spend money going to the market, which is already expensive. And
Mhm.
then each bar of soap is roughly $1. Now, to expect someone to spend $1 who's typically earning less than that or about that on a daily basis on a bar of soap means it's not going to be a priority right now.
Mhm.
So oftentimes, if they do have soap, they use it very sparingly and don't use it properly.
Mhm.
So obviously, hygiene is a crucial part to health. Um, we started this program where right before I left, each weaver received their 2 bars. I mean, they were just elated with this, and I had to keep emphasizing, we're not giving this to you. This is part of what's coming out of the work you're doing. This is how we're able to reinvest because you guys are making such amazing products that we can sell them. So we started that program. I also bought 10 bottles of liquid soap for the center. So, and this all happened like within a couple of days of me leaving, and this thing, kind of exploding on a global scale,
Mhm.
or at least the way that it kind of started, to gain traction. So right now, they're all also, kind of not working. Everything's also on hold. But at a minimum, we know that they at least have a way to take care of hand washing, which is a crucial part to prevent the spread. It has not arrived in this area. COVID-19 has not arrived. I pray that it stays that way.
Mhm.
I hope that some of the stuff that I read about it potentially being, having adverse reactions to heat is true because it is very hot over there. It is about 107 to 110 degrees on a given day.
Wow.
So I hope that that's true, because it would be very helpful for them. But for now, that is the best that we can do from where we're at because we can't even send money at this point because they can't even go to the banks to pick them up.
Wow.
So we're in a weird situation.
I know. It's been challenging for everybody. I was reading the article that you wrote and shared on a social on Facebook on this page that we met each other at that group, which is a sustainable fashion group. Um, and I want to mention this because there's been going on this phenomenon of a little bit more edgy, let's say,
Putting it
behavior,
nicely.
right? And I think it's because we are all in a very strange situation, and some people are really struggling. So it has put a lot of pressure on us. But the story is that you published this article, and people went berserk. So tell us the story.
Well, I wrote an article and I posted it on a platform called Medium, which is a like an online magazine per se. And this is the very first time that I had ever written anything aside from the blogging that I've done on my own website. And I posted it onto several groups, a lot of groups. And I just want to say that the grand majority of the responses that I got were very positive, very positive. People were very thankful about the information and the insights that I had put in that article because it gave them some kind of solace in this entire situation, which was the whole purpose, it was the whole purpose. Now, um, I posted it in that particular group where you and I met, and I mean the pitchforks just came out, right? Which I was not expecting. When I posted the article on that group, I had asked for feedback, expecting constructive feedback. What I got was some constructive feedback, which was great and very useful, and I learned a lot from. But
Mhm.
then I got the snarks, and I got the holier than thous, and I got the elitist calling me an elitist. It was just like the worst. One of the biggest issues that they saw with the article, which I can totally understand, was the title,
Mhm.
where the title said why COVID-19 is a godsend for small brands and businesses.
Mhm.
What I probably should have written is why it may be a godsend, and perhaps maybe not even use the word godsend, because it definitely could be off-putting to some people, and I see that. I for sure see that.
Mhm.
But that was not my intention, right? So I got highly criticized about the title of my article,
Mhm.
um, and many people just made a lot of assumptions, who clearly had not even read the article, and then they began voicing those assumptions in a very nasty and snarky way, which was not productive whatsoever.
Mhm.
And there was even, I mean, just to give you an idea, I mean, I was called privileged, obscene, elitist. I was called racist, which was my favorite. Inhumane. Oh my goodness, like the list goes on, right?
Mhm.
And one woman in particular just went bonkers. She went as far as not only writing a post on her own Instagram, but which I saw, and I kind of giggled at, but I didn't want to interact with that. I was already done at that point.
You
But she,
find about that.
I'm sorry?
He tagged you on
No,
Instagram?
no, no, she didn't tag me. I mean, I wouldn't have had a problem with it if she had. But she also went as far as commenting on my article, and then what did she say she did? She like called or reported it for violation of terms of services. Her contention was that I was being racist because part of my opinion was that made in China products, people are going to be far more judicious about this now, especially because we don't want to support a government that is going to benefit from this, and a government that particularly and thrives on exploiting its people. The people of China, in my opinion, are victims of this very same government. And also, and I think it's pretty fair to say that a lot of people do believe that the Chinese government withheld a lot of crucial information for us that could have helped us better prepare ourselves for this pandemic. And they did that to not hurt their image and their commerce relations. And of course, for voicing that, I was called a racist, which I can't even say that with a straight face. But, look, one thing I learned was the following, out of many, but the most important thing I learned here is that you can express what you want to say and say how you want to say it and try to be as gentle as you think you can be.
Mhm.
People are still going to come at you, right? There's always going to be those few that are going to scream at you. And, I have to be very, very honest here. I mean, I wasn't a saint in this situation either. I mean, I was snarky with some of the responses I made, and I've been a snark in the previously. But now that I'm on this end where I was receiving some of this, I was realizing, my goodness, how unproductive this was. How unproductive it is to comment that way. Because even though you may have some validity in what you're saying, the way that you processed or your message came across, I shut you down. Like, I shut you off. I'm not listening to you. You're not changing my mind. You're not changing my way of approaching things. If anything, I'm standing my ground.
Of
You know,
course, because the
so
first approach is aggressive and the first
mhm,
approach is an insult. So why? I think I feel the same, and I think the same, and I've engaged myself in a few conversations that I know that they're not going to change anybody's mind, especially if you engage on social media. We're set, but at least I think that it's very valid to exchange points of view.
yes,
uh, but I am very mindful of the way I'm trying to express myself, because I know, because I've read it, because I think everybody has been probably not personally engaged in a situation like this, but all of us have seen this aggressiveness. So I do know that if my point comes across with an aggression, it's just gonna get so far. If my opinion, as kind as I can give an opinion or a perspective, is not gonna change your mind, being
well,
aggressive,
yeah.
no, it's never going to happen. So I
And
think that right now we're all going through this very strange
yeah.
situation, stressful and painful.
And I didn't intend on this being controversial. And by the way, this was the only group where it was. Um, but interestingly enough, the traffic to my site was through the roof that day. I made more sales on that day than I had all month. I also, my article had been read and shared countless of times. My read through rate was also very, very high. And this is like kind of unheard of for someone who's written something for the first time on such platform. And this sort of kind of drove a really important point home that I, as a business person and as a business, as a brand, am still trying to figure out how to navigate. And that is, controversy sells. But I don't want to be controversial. It's okay to talk about controversial topics, but to intentionally write something that's going to be controversial, I think, like it dilutes your message. This case, I was not trying to be controversial,
I honestly think right now there are very few things that you post that are not that we can post that are not going to be controversial.
Yeah.
Even the jokes, all these memes joking about
Yeah.
this whole quarantine thing, even those memes are insulting for people. So
People, yeah.
yeah,
You can't live in a bubble, and I definitely understand that now. But as I was joking on that thread, I realized why the Kardashians do what they do, how they'll post something, piss off a bunch of people. They don't engage with the people that are being really rude and mean to them and nasty. And then they post something similar the next day and the day after that and the day after that. And they just continue on. And yet their brands have built this incredible following, and they make a lot of money. And I realized with the situation that you're not going to win them all, but with time you will find your niche, and that's where you need to focus on, because that's essentially going to be your tribe. And the people that know me and that know what I'm trying to accomplish, they stick around. They are very, very interested and happy to be a part of this, and I'm happy to have them. And those are the ones that matter, and those are the opinions that matter.
Of course, and I think also part of the sustainable movement, I think it has to begin with human dignity, because, for example, your brand specifically, you're talking about helping people, right? It's helping them to have a better life. So, there's an intention, there's a beginning of that. And I believe strongly that part of the sustainable fashion movement has to start there, being kind, being better human beings. So after, then you can say you do fashion in an ethical way, because you are behaving ethically since the very start.
Right.
So I know it's complicated, and I've seen it a lot more than before. Online, people are with their nails out. It's complicated, but I strongly believe that if we can get out of this treating each other with more human dignity and taking care a little bit more of the words that come out of our mouths, because I don't know why people feel very empowered because we're behind the screen and entitled to insult and entitled to to treat.
I also feel that part of the problem is this like almost fake outrage that people sometimes express themselves in when they don't agree with your point of view. And when you do that, it's almost like you're saying, I'm so upset, I'm so outraged that this topic, your point is invalid, you are invalid, who you are is invalid, and everything about you is invalid, and you need to be canceled. That is such a dangerous way of approaching things. A lot of people on that thread that were attacking me were approaching it that way. And this is why, and I've said this before, I am not a Donald Trump supporter, but this is why people who do support him don't express themselves and then surprise all of us on election night. Come out. So if you're going to change hearts and minds, I posted that article onto that Facebook page specifically asking for constructive feedback.
I know.
That would have been the right way of approaching me. And like I said, I'm not a saint in this. Of course, I'm not a robot either. And, I felt compelled to kind of snark back and be sarcastic, and I shouldn't have done that because honestly, it was a waste of my time. But I was having fun with it, and I was indulging in it, and I shouldn't have, But It is what it is. We all learn. I don't regret it because it was an incredible learning experience for me. And if I may say so of myself, a
Mhm.
godsend.
I know. I think there's a couple of points that for me are important. First is that we all have our opinions, right? We all have our way of thinking and our very particular circumstances of how, in general, but in this very specific situation, how we are dealing with this, because some of us are more privileged. We can stay at home, we have a
Totally.
computer, we have our needs met, we have our family healthy, and some people are really, really struggling in so many ways that we don't even comprehend. So I think that yes, it is important that we open, our perspective. It's very complicated. I mean, we shouldn't lose ourselves, in everybody's perspective. But yes, it is important that we feel more, and I try it a lot, to feel more empathetic, because I know that there's people that are struggling way much more than I am struggling right now, and in ways, as I said, that I cannot even imagine. Um, but also, how we communicate. It is okay that we have this perspective, okay, and you might not agree with me, that's fine, but that doesn't give me the right or give you the right to insult and to just nullify, right, whatever I think
Mm-hmm.
a good thing, or however I am going through this, because I am going through it too, and
Right.
you are going through it too. It's not that because you're going through it in some other aspect, I am not going through it, so
Right.
I don't know. I think we're feeling all the fire of being contained.
Oh yeah.
And
Yeah, I definitely, I was joking with a friend. I said, now I understand more than ever why it is a crime to keep an animal caged. You know, um, I definitely see what you're saying and I agree with it. I mean, I certainly admit that in some cases I've also been part of that problem. Having this experience on the other end of things kind of put it into a different perspective, one that I had never seen it in, which was very, very important to know and to experience. Um, but I, especially in the sustainability community,
Mhm.
sometimes it feels like it's like, there's like a who's holier than thou, who's the holiest of them all kind of competition. And a lot of people need to understand that we're still trying to figure out how to do this correctly. There's a lot of moving parts here. To suggest that someone is not worth the attention or worth the support because in your mind they're not doing it the way that you believe is the right way to do it is really, really screwed up. It's that's not how you teach people. That's not how that's not how you engage with them properly. That's not how you make a difference. you know
Okay.
um so I have seen that a lot within this community, of people, who's like the more sustainable one of all, who's got the, every single nook and cranny of the sustainable definition applied to their brand or their business approach. And I mean, let's face it, it's a very, very dynamic thing to run a business. There's a lot of moving parts. It is impossible to meet everybody's expectations or what the community's expectations are.
No, and I don't think that's the goal. I think that we are all in the same boat,
Yes.
trying to make things better in whatever you're doing, which is very different to what I'm doing, which is very different to, the rest of the world. But I think there's a common core, which is trying to make things better.
Mm-hmm.
So how are we trying to make things better? I don't think it's going to work being hostile.
Right.
It's not going to be, it's just going to be that way. So I understand. I saw the whole thread. I was like, wow. I mean, I was really surprised. You and I spoke about the article before. I understood your point perfectly. I understand why people, felt aggravated by
Yeah.
the word God sent, but because I knew what you were talking about because we spoke about it before, I understood, So one of those episodes in social media that, yeah, that I hope they bring lessons, and I think that the biggest lesson should be that we need to be more empathetic one way or the other, for this side or this other side, just to know
No,
that.
as a matter of fact, one of the reasons why I was inspired to write that
Mhm,
was because when I came to that conclusion, having felt and suffered and dealing with this pain that I've been kind of all of a sudden thrusted into because of this pandemic,
mhm,
um, when I recognized this, it calmed me, it soothed me, it gave me perspective. I felt calm, I felt, clear. And I said, my God, I hope that this helps other people feel the same way,
of course.
you know? So that, I mean, that was the whole purpose of this. And that's why, again, I say, like, the grand majority of the reactions were very, very positive, which is probably why I had so much traffic that day, because people were like, probably wanted to support this more than not support it. Um, but I'm very, very thankful that I've had that opportunity. I do appreciate those groups, those groups. I think the good, the bad, the ugly, the pretty, all of those comments are important, because you gotta, you learn from them.
Mhm.
And really, especially as a business person, I even joked with someone there. I go, look, this is not the first, I'm an entrepreneur. Like, this is not the first time I've gotten my ass kicked, and it won't be the last. So I'm going to be fine. But
Yeah,
I,
yeah,
I definitely appreciated at least having the opportunity to share it on that group.
of course. And people read about what you had to say, and more people knew about your brand, and
Right.
it's
It
just
worked.
persisting. It will pass. This
Right.
too shall pass. So, yes, I wanted to thank you because I know this whole social distancing is complicated. But I want to thank you. I enjoy very much, I have to say, all first women like you that are, pushing through and, being brave, to help people in places so far as to Ghana, right? And seeing this um, benefit and this beautiful art of, 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 of their craft and trying to empower other communities. So I love that very much. And also the work that these communities do. I'm in love with that. And I'm from Mexico, and there's a lot of that work in my country, and I love it. So I can connect well to the beauty of it.
No, I thank you.
Yeah, so I wish you all the best. We will be in contact, and I hope that we keep each other posted about our work.
Yes. Carolina, thank you so much for your time and for your interest in this little crazy venture that I started in my mother's living room 5 years ago, when I decided that I wanted to do this. I never would have imagined that it would have, evolved and grown the way that it has. And I appreciate you for giving me a platform to talk about it. Um, and to connect with your with your viewers and your readers. So thank you very much. We really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you. I will see each other soon, okay? Take care,
Absolutely.
please.
Thank you.
Bye.
Besitos. Bye.
Take care. Bye bye. Thank you so much for being with us. And I hope you enjoyed this conversation. I know I did enjoy it very much. We will be seeing each other next Wednesday at 1 p.m. in English and at 12 p.m. in Spanish. If you know somebody that would be interested in this that only speaks Spanish, we have it at 12 or English. Next week, we will start talking about fashion revolution. This is a movement that started a few years ago after a disaster in a garment factory in Bangladesh. So we're gonna speak about it, and I'm trying to nail an interview with someone very important in Bangladesh. Hopefully they can. They're struggling a lot right now. But stay tuned. We will prepare something really, really cool for you, so we all understand why this sustainable fashion movement is so important for all of us. So take care, and we will see you soon. Okay?